This is a CBS News special report. I'm Elaine Quijano reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York. Good afternoon. There has been a major earthquake in Mexico, a magnitude 7.1, centered about 75 miles southeast of Mexico City. First reports say at least 5 people were killed. Our Jamie Yukas has been monitoring this story from Los Angeles, and she joins us now with more. Jamie, what's the latest?
Elaine, I can tell you we're seeing some very dramatic images just coming into our newsroom from Mexican television stations. We've seen some buildings collapse, a number of those, at least one building explosion. As you said, 5 people dead. That is the current number being reported by local television stations in Mexico and around Mexico City. I can tell you that the area had been on high alert. This is the anniversary of that 1985 earthquake that was devastating to that area. Just a couple hours ago, the area had actually gone through drills to make sure that people were ready for another massive earthquake. Some of the reports are saying that there was no alert system activated. We know that there is usually an alert system that's activated, but at this point in time, what we're hearing is that the ground just started shaking. Buildings, there was rubble that started collapsing very momentarily after the ground started shaking. About a 7.1 magnitude quake is what's being reported right now. There's been different reports between the Mexican government and the U.S. government saying between 6.8 and 7.1 magnitude quake. At least 5 people have died, and of course these pictures are coming in just a couple of weeks after we saw that magnitude 8.2 earthquake in southern Mexico, which reports indicate almost 100 people died during that quake. Now, some of the latest numbers coming in right now is that it's unclear if people were inside a number of buildings that did collapse, so that death toll number could go up from what we're being told is 5 right now. We're going to have to keep an eye on some of those reports coming in and some of the images that are coming in from local media. Again, this earthquake centered near Mexico City, but about 93 miles away in Puebla. Mexican television stations broadcasting images of those collapsed buildings in heavily populated parts of the city. We should mention that there's a lot of traffic in that area where traffic is at a standstill, people trying to get out. The other images that we started seeing come in right away was from office buildings where people were at work. The quake started. They started running for the exits, some of the doorways there. You could see people hugging each other and diving under desks at one point in time. The Mexican president just recently sent out some tweets saying that he had called the National Emergency Committee to assess the situation and coordinate actions right now. Before returning to your home or building, review damage, disconnect the lights, and close the gas. It's important to avoid travel on streets and avenues to allow emergency vehicles to pass. It sounds like the president is in the air right now traveling within the country and not in Mexico City itself. So we will continue to monitor that as well. I want to throw it back to you, Elaine, as we continue to monitor some of the situations. Of course, this is a breaking story. At least 5 people dead in a 7.1 magnitude quake near Mexico City.
Jamie, these images are just devastating, including that image of a building. We don't know if anyone was inside, but that building that collapsed there, we're waiting to find out what exactly that building was. Obviously, a very chaotic situation right now in the immediate aftermath. But you mentioned earlier, Jamie, that this particular earthquake comes on the anniversary of an earthquake in 1985 that killed thousands. And at the moment that this quake struck today, there was actually a drill going on. Tell us more about that.
The drill started about 2 hours before this earthquake hit, and I can tell you that the country had been on high alert. Just when that earthquake hit in southern Mexico earlier this month, people could feel it within Mexico City, and people were running to the streets in their pajamas. It hit in the overnight hours. It brought back some of those images from 1985 where it looks like 10,000 people died. People may not remember that, but thousands of people died in that earthquake. So this was very fresh in people's minds. People had been talking about earthquakes. Again, an alert system did not go off in this quake today. They had been doing drills about 2 hours before this earthquake struck. So people taken by surprise when the earth started shaking. Obviously in Mexico, they know how to go through earthquakes. They've had to live through earthquakes. It's a way of life for many people there. So it's one of those things that they had been talking about it. They went through the drills this morning. People were remembering the victims from 1985, and then this happened. So just kind of an ironic moment movement within the country as well, as we start seeing some of these images come into play where we don't know how many people exactly have been killed. The first estimate is 5 people, Elaine.
All right, Jamie Yukas in Los Angeles for us as we continue to monitor these images of just utter devastation, utter destruction in Mexico. To repeat, there has been a major earthquake in Mexico, centered about 75 miles southeast of Mexico City, a magnitude 7.1. At least 5 people are dead, but the search for victims is just beginning. There will be much more on your local news, on this CBS station, on our 24-hour streaming news service, CBSN, and right here tonight on the CBS Evening News. I'm Elaine Quijano, CBS News, New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to cbsnews.com.